ago. They were trading threats over Cuba. This happened, or started really, on this day in 1960. At the time, Cuba was a dangerous focus of the Cold War competition between the U.S. and Russia. And we know what happens shortly after that. We saw Nikita Khrushchev banging his shoe and saying that the Soviets would bury the U.S. Didn't work out that way. Let's talk about this a little bit more, though, with New York Times bestselling author and presidential historian, Newsmax analyst as well, Craig Shirley. Craig, great to see you.
Good to see you, John. Thank you.
All right. So, I mean, there were some pretty strong words, a lot of bellicose saber rattling between Eisenhower and Nikita Khrushchev. The difference was back then is, you know, the world was on America's side, and Nikita Khrushchev actually said too much, and that really scared a lot of the rest of the Western world. He overstepped. But when you look at the situation now, Vladimir Putin seems a lot more confident. Joe Biden, Tony Blinken, the foreign policy team don't seem up to the task.
No, don't. Let's remember, Dwight Eisenhower is not Joe Biden. Dwight Eisenhower was a four-star general, five-star general, was a leader of D-Day, was a national, international hero, and was a strong and resolute and intelligent president. Joe Biden is none of those things. And Putin senses weakness. And so I think that this is very dangerous, the way Brezhnev sensed weakness in Jimmy Carter, and that's why he made his military escapades, including the invasion of Afghanistan. First time the Soviets had moved into a new non-Soviet country in many years.
You know, what was interesting, too, about Eisenhower, after 8 years of the Eisenhower administration, America had kind of grown. I guess they were taking him for granted. I don't know. You know, they elected John Kennedy in November of that year. And then shortly after that, you know, John Kennedy, you know, praised a lot for his domestic issues, but really doesn't have a good track record when it comes to foreign policy. And what's interesting, too, is how Eisenhower and Kennedy actually communicated together, two different presidents from different political parties, different political philosophies, but they came together because, let's be honest, JFK needed Eisenhower's assistance to kind of negotiate himself out of the issue of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes, he did. And JFK, remember, the Democratic Party in those days was just as anti-communist as was the Republican Party. In some cases, maybe more so. During the 1960 campaign, John Kennedy made much of the Chinese takeover of Quemoy and Matsu, which are two tiny islands off the coast of China. He made much of the Soviet, the Russian takeover of Cuba. He made much of the missile gap with the Soviet Union. So in many ways, John Kennedy actually got to Richard Nixon's right on the issue of anti-communism, and he performed abysmally in the Bay of Pigs fiasco, but he performed brilliantly in the Cuban Missile Crisis. So, so Kennedy was a good, strong anti-communist. You look at his speech, his acceptance, his nomination, his convention, his inaugural speech in 1961, and how many times he uses the word freedom. You don't hear that talk from Democrats anymore. No,
and that's another stark difference between the political environment of today, where you see so many Democrats flirting with the idea of socialism. And, you know, Vladimir Putin isn't a socialist in the classic sense of the word, but there are a lot of reminders he does, you know, want to rule like a Soviet-style premier.
No, he definitely wants to restore the old Soviet empire, but he is an oligarch. He wants to merge together the power of the state and big corporations, much the way China has done, in order to restore the old Soviet Union and have dominion over the Warsaw Pact, the Eastern Europe, and maybe much more if he gets a chance.
That's right, and if, you know, that's why he starts chewing off pieces of Ukraine, looks for other places in Poland, Sweden as well. And, you know, again, you don't have any kind of even appearance of strength coming from the current administration.
No, you don't. You have just weakness. Like, for instance, the last time they met last month is that they met for an hour, and then Putin went out in a press conference and berated the United States for an hour, and Biden didn't even respond. Biden didn't even take up the cause of defending the United States.
Right.
And making the case the United States is morally superior to that of Mother Russia.
Right, and it always will be as long as a guy like Vladimir Putin is in charge of Russia. Craig Shirley, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you, John. Have a good weekend.
I will. All right, we're going to talk about baseball and what happens when you wear a MAGA hat to a Yankees game.